Thank you. Erin, could you just stand up? I mean, she makes me look a lot better, so I want people to know that I'm associated with her. This is the family, and God has just been so good to us. And kids love the Lord. I've got a couple family pictures here. So our daughter just got married. So she's our younger son had been, or our youngest, we have two. He had been married 2 years ago, and they're expecting. So we're Grandpa Shane, Grandma Erin. That's about ready to happen. Well, basically, second semester. And then Camila got married 2 months ago, about two months and a week or so. And so we've been waiting for this for years, preparing. We'll talk a little bit about that today. All looking back, and it's not going to be notes of expert. It's just survivor notes of how we got here. We're just so thankful that God allowed us to have kids that love Him, and there's a lot of battle along the way. Here's the kids serving God. Gabe and Nachi are assistant youth pastors at the church we were on staff with we were there for about 12 years, and we've been out of that ministry since about August 21. But our kids stayed there. They married kids that they grew up in the youth group. Our kids are both Brazilian and American. They were born in Porto Alegre, Brazil. So I was raised in Brazil since I was 5. Came back, met my wife here at Pillsbury Baptist Bible College, where Joel Anderson and Garrett Parton were up there, and it might have been somebody else here that was in school with us. Toner was there, but not this Toner. I guess there's another Toner, right? So. Is your older brother. So he was there a little bit after me when I was helping. We were raising support back in the early 90s. He was there, and I was the assistant coach at soccer there. But so met Erin, took her down to Brazil. We've been there since 90, off and on since 92. 8 days after we were married, we went there to see if she'd be able to learn the language. She did, and now our kids were raised down there, both of them. So Thiago, our son-in-law, he's the media minister at the church, but he also preaches to the youth. Our daughter, she's a songwriter and a musician, so she's always involved in the music. And then Gabe and Nachi are the assistant youth leaders. We also have other kids that aren't biological kids, but they call us mom and dad. There's probably about 10 of those that grew up in our ministry, and we're really excited about what God's doing in their lives. These are Manu and Mel, Jonathan and Melissa, and they are missionaries that were just sent out from our city, and our newest church there that meets in our home prayed to send them out to work with the church plant about 2 hours from where we live. And that's I think their third prayer letter. They just had their fourth prayer letter come out. So just to see how God has raised up people, and not just our own kids, but in our home that now serve the Lord, it's a lot of grace. It's a lot of God coming in and bringing mentors into our lives when we most desperately needed it. And so we thank God for that. Be, share, go are the values. I was really excited to hear, so let me see if I got it right. It's to glorify God by developing passionate disciples of Jesus. Is that it? Pretty much? So I was thinking about the components of that, at the end of everything that is done here, whether it's Awana or whether it's a church service here, the music ministry, the glory of God, right? And the way that's going to happen is the development, not just the transfer that come from other churches, and we're glad to have, but the development, people that will come to know the Lord here, and maybe they'll come here and then grow in the Lord too. But the development of not just disciples, passionate disciples about Jesus. We are excited about that. And when we look at what God allows us to do in Brazil, we often are excited to be able to be an extension of what God's already doing here in the U.S. in churches just like this one. And so we are certainly excited about developing passionate disciples, ambassadors, right, is the right word, ambassadors of Christ. And the way that we describe that is to be, share, go. Those are our action values. So they're values that actually have to show up in everything we do. So we want to be disciples who make disciples. And so that means that everything we do, you can't take somebody someplace that you've never been, or lead them out of a desert that you're still lost in, right? So you have to be before you can share. And what in our own ministry, we were able to plant 3 churches back in the beginning, and we had to pause. Probably the most important thing we did was after those first 3 church plants, we needed help. And so we got help because we noticed that we were sharing and going with faithfulness, but there were some things that we need to stop and go back to be able to become authentic in every area of our ministry. And God allowed us to do that, and our families stay together, and all the pressures that are involved in the ministry, we're able to have some really good mentoring. That was back in 2008. So basically, mid-2008 till early 2011, we had a pause time in our ministry because we were learning that it's not just about sharing the gospel and going. You actually have to be an authentic disciple in every aspect of your life. And so to be authentic disciples who make disciples and share God's gifts. So it's not, we're not the mavericks, on our own. God has other people in town. He has other people that he's using. This church, he's using you. And so what we can do to be an encouragement to the churches that we visit, we want to do that as well. To share God's gifts as we go into all the world until God's end vision comes true. Because God's seen, he's shared a vision of the end. We know he knows where he's going with the story of humanity. And we get to see that in Revelation, that someday, Revelation 7, 9, and 10, someday that vision that God has of where the whole story is going to end up, every tribe, every nation before the Lord, praising God and praising the Lamb. I mean, that's going to happen. And to have lived a significant life means you will have connected with that vision. And so as we think about that, we want to be, share, and go. We divide our work week basically up in those values. So to be, it has to do with our mentoring and our discipling. And so we can mentor other younger pastors or missionaries and people that are in ministry. But also there's another list there, probably Aaron and I have about 15 of new disciples that are coming, either saved already, God's just recently been bringing them in, or they're about to make a decision. So it's that being a disciple who makes disciples, that's probably about 40% or 50% of what we do. And then that share category has to do with the networking and just helping other people out, other churches out in our area that want to grow and plant other churches. That even includes here in the U.S., as we have a few churches that we can help them out as they think about inserting discipleship and small groups that grow and multiply, and just to help them think through how to do that. That's about 20% of our work there in the middle column of networking and sharing. And then the go has to do with just being on the team, on staff, with a church plant in progress. We have 3 of those right now. The Cajal Church, which started last May. Then we have the Monte das Oliveiras churches. Been going for about 7 years, but the couple the Silvas, this couple right here, they had never been discipled, and so we were able to bring them alongside and just walk with them as a young pastor and his wife. And then we have the Veia Mesa, which means come to the table, and we're really excited about that. That's a church that's planted in our home, and it started just over a year, in about a year and 3 months. We've been working with that church. So we have those 3 go projects, 3 churches that are being planted. A few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, we were being helped by a mentor, and he was helping us think through what do you do? How do you explain what you actually do? So what Erin does, besides sometimes she speaks at women's conferences, often she has people, we always have people at our home, hospitality, discipleship there in the kitchen or out, at a table there. We have a few ambiances where she can be discipling somebody, I can be discipling somebody. And whether it's a ladies group, maybe going through some material, a book with a group of ladies, or out just doing mission work, on the front line. But as we came to a 2-word description, Erin, she cultivates hope. And then if you want to double click on that, she cultivates hope through meaningful relationships. And she does a great job with that. What she's most passionate about is, are we missing a slide there? Well, there's a slide that didn't make it. She's most passionate about making disciples through all that. And so being able to baptize and bring these ladies into a relationship where they're leading their kids. And so that's what she's excited about. I get to do some other things too. Those are wrestling, opportunities in jiu-jitsu school, so I get to teach the wrestling I did at Pillsbury. I mean, it's amazing. It was 20, what I don't know, back in 92 was my last year. And a few years ago, I was discipling another minister there in a coffee shop, and we saw that this middle-aged guy who was well known as one of the best coaches for jiu-jitsu in the world was sitting there and said, hey, let's talk to him, see if we can include him in the conversation. And by the end of that conversation, he says, you know, if I was to have anybody come teach wrestling to my guys, his team was the best in the world that year. It was 2016. So they had the trophy, you know, in the world championship, they add up the points of how many champions have on each team. So they were the best in the world. And he says, well, if I was going to have a wrestling coach, you know, to help with the takedowns and stuff, it'd have to be an American. And I said, well, I am an American. And he said, well, why don't you come by and teach the guys some stuff? And I went home. I was like, God, please help me remember Coach Hayeswinkle's stuff. You know, I went online. How do you do an accurate? Because we had taught. My dad and I had taught kids over the years as an outreach, but they're already world champion guys. You know, so for me to bring something, I was really nervous. And so I went there. We did 2 classes, and that group went off to Abu Dhabi for the World Championships. And I get a audio message, a WhatsApp audio message from Mario, the head coach. Shane, you won't believe it. Amaral just won the World Championship on an ankle pick he learned from you 2 weeks ago. I say, wow. So, I mean, we can be obedient, sometimes scared. I was scared to go over there. Obedient, but we can never plan something like that, right? The guy's going to take what you taught and then win a world championship. But God does that stuff. Ours is the fish and the loaves, right? You just take it there and see, but then God multiplies it. So after that, I could teach wrestling in any jiu-jitsu school in South Brazil and in other places in the world that know who Mario is. We were visiting Jerusalem a few years after that. And I got to give a class in a jiu-jitsu school in Jerusalem. So God has really multiplied that part in that surprising way. And so people have begun to trust the Lord through those, because around the mat, you know, just finish up the class. It's like, hey, today I was in the Word, and it was about Noah. You should be in the Word every day. So that sensei and in my case, the visiting wrestling coach, you have a time at the end of that practice you can say something. And so God has given us a voice there. I also, this last year, those young people here got saved and baptized, and we're praying that they will open a ministry in their home. And as we were discipling them, Aaron said, Shane, you should get back into competing too. I mean, you should. So I won the first tournament, won the next one. I went to the end of the year and I won that belt there. So it's for, older folk category. They have it all the categories: old guy, blue belt, unlimited weight class. But I did get it. So what I'm most passionate about, and Aaron as well, is making disciples and to see people. God, so whether it's cooking, there's one before that. We have a culinary, sometimes we use motorcycle ministry. We have a culinary channel on Instagram called Come to the Table. And we'll go visit people in town, in the U.S. too, but in town there's like, hey, you were having smash burgers for lunch the other day, weren't you? I was. And so can we come over to your house? People invite themselves over to our house, and then we have this rhythm. They'll come over to the house, and it's about 2 times a week that we have people come over. They'll sit down, and we'll feed them whatever they picked off the channel, off our the pictures there, and then get into the gospel with them. It's an amazing door for the gospel. And like I was saying, the most exciting thing, though, it's not the hamburgers or the steaks, whatever. The exciting thing is make disciples. Disciples who then will make other disciples. So these are the empty nesters. Our kids just grew up. We get to serve together. We're living our best moment. I hope you are. And we thought it was before, too, though. When our kids were just about ready to leave home, we thought that was the best moment. And so we're so thankful that God allows us to serve together, and He's given us the health to do that. We work that are calling out in Rio Grande do Sul, southern Brazil. down by Uruguay and Argentina. Want to just leave kind of a general invitation to bring a group down again to visit us. Porto Alegre is the capital city. You may have seen on the news, our whole state was flooded out the whole month of May. And so there's like 2.5 million people were out of their homes, or 2.5 million people were without electricity and without electricity or water. And the water situation continues because all the water has been contaminated. So now pretty much until October or November, they're going to have bottled water coming in if you don't have a well. We had 500,000 people out of their homes and 60,000 people in shelters throughout the month of May. So our trip here to the U.S. was going to be in May. We ended up staying down there because our airport was flooded out too. And we were able to help with a couple of those shelters. And we still have a lot of work when we get back. A lot of cleanup, a lot of opportunities to serve because of the flood. And so Porto Alegre is the capital city. The water, that river is called Guaíba, has gone down since, but it's a city that's reeling from the worst flood in 287-year history of the city. A lot of confusion, a lot of spiritual confusion. A lot of people are both Catholic and a Spiritist, and so those things, they end up melding together down there. And so you'll see people that will go to the Catholic Church because they were raised, nominal Catholic, but they'll also, if they need to get something done, get a job or lay a curse on somebody, they'll go to the Spiritists and they'll kill a chicken or a goat at the street corner. It's very common to have both. And so we have a huge opportunity to bring the gospel clarity in that culture that's very confused. This was our 1 year come to the table celebration there. So we'd been meeting for about a year, and there's about 70 people came together for that this around Easter time this year. And the exciting thing, what God's allowing us to do, is since we have those two other church plants, which are very similar to this church here, I think you'd feel very at home going to either one of those. You'd recognize the way that things are happening. There's a church service, worship music, and then God allowed us to start this third church in our home, and we just asked ourselves the question, if we wanted to get to 100% disciples making disciples, if that was the goal, 100%, not 80-20, not 50-50, if we want to see 100% of the people that are in this church, disciples making disciples, what would that look like? And as we began to pray and ask God for that, because we can send the people that don't want to make disciples to these other two churches that are in town. We say, hey guys, listen, there's other good churches to go to. This is actually a gathering for disciples who are going to make disciples. And we've done that quite a bit this last year. And so what it is as people come to our table, it's called Come to the Table. They come and then they're encouraged that now this week you came to our table, and next week you're going to open your table at your home. And then we're going to disciple you throughout the week to be able to reproduce what you experienced here at your house. And so the outline pictures are the families who are at different stages beginning to open their home. And and it starts with just you and the Lord. We'll talk about that a little bit today, but it's just a person, sit down at the table with Jesus. And then bring that to your family. So now, as we sit down at the table with the family, then what did Jesus tell me? What did he tell you in your devotional time? And then that you can invite in a cousin or a neighbor. And pretty soon you have this group of people gathered in your home, and you're receiving discipleship so that can happen. And then you participate in one as a model. So that's what God's given us with this church plant. It's a little bit unique, and it's only been a year going. So when we were on this trip, we were participating here with the group at our home. The Silvas, the pastors of one of the other church plants, they support us by being there while we're gone. And here, two different members are praying for us. So at this scene right here, Aaron and I have already shared with the group around the table how this whole service, it takes about 2 hours to get through the first part. And that's why it's not for everybody, right? Basically, you go around and say, when you look backwards, how did God show up in your week this last week? So everybody's going to go through. We had just done this. God showed up like this. How did you obey the scriptures like you said you were on the way out of last service. So imagine at the end of this service, whatever we go through in the Word here, it'll be Psalm 128. You had an I will statement. So by the time you walked out that door today, you have this I will statement of obedience that you're going to share with somebody else here. And before you get into the next Bible study next week, there'll be an opportunity for you to share how did that go? How did you do what you said you were going to do? And so that happens around the table. We had just shared that. So it's three things you respond to. How did God show up? How did I obey the scriptures? And who did I share the gospel with? So that's before you get into the new Bible study. And so now at this point, we were at a coffee shop in Butte, Montana here last Friday, and they're praying for us because we've shared that, and then they went forward and did that themselves. This service, there's this pastor, I'll call him Eli. This is his sending service. We weren't there, but we prayed for them and prayed for him and gave him a sending off. And then at the end of the service, they came around him and prayed for him. He's going to Abu Dhabi as a professional, and he's going to start a church in his home there and making disciples in that very dangerous place. It's illegal, right, to do that. So you can be praying for him. In our prayer letters, his name will be Eli. He's a pastor that I was able to walk with in discipleship for about 5 years, and now he's moving as a missionary to Abu Dhabi. So that happened at that house church meeting too last Friday. So basically, just to kind of sum up how it works to make disciples, and there might be some application to glorifying God by developing, passionate ambassadors of Christ, right? So you can't be passionate about something that you aren't personally yet. So it all starts at that first table. As you sit down at the table with Jesus, and we call it personal devotions, a God and I time. There's different words for it, but just think about it as how Jesus says in Revelation chapter 3 that he's knocking on the door. He wants to come in. He's talking to Christians here. I want to come in. And these Christians in that passage, if you read it, they got a problem with religion. They got a lot of activity, but he says, you think that you're doing good, but you're not doing so good. Is what he says in that passage, right? And he says, but you should come get from me the real stuff. And he says, and I'm actually knocking on the door, I'd like to come in and have a meal with you and you with me. And that will take care of the things that need to be taken care of. That will give you a victorious life. And so as we disciple people, and whether it's leaders or new believers, we say, hey, the first thing you got to do is you got to have a vibrant, passionate time with God at the Jesus table every day. Because then you'll have something to offer. From there, you can overflow to your family table. And Psalm 128 is what we're going to talk about today, because the family is the unit by which God is going to bless not just the church, but the world. It's his idea. And it's made up of passionate disciples of Jesus that make up the families. In John 6:44, it says that God's going to draw people to him. John 16:8 says that the Holy Spirit will convict the world of sin, of righteousness, and judgment. Matthew 16:18 says that Jesus is going to build the church. What I noticed is after about 3 decades of this, a lot of the tension, a lot of the pressure in ministry is I'm trying to do the things that Jesus can do. I'm trying to do the things that the Holy Spirit's supposed to do, that God's going to do. I need to attract people in and get them to like Jesus. God's going to draw people to him. And the Holy Spirit's going to actually convince them. I've spent a lot of time trying to convince people that they're sinners. You really are a sinner. I don't think so. You are. It gets into that accusation mode. The good news is that if we are faithful being disciples who make disciples and giving out the gospel with a credible witness, the Holy Spirit's job is to make the world believe that they're sinners and that there is such a thing as righteousness and then there's judgment coming. And Jesus is going to build the church. So what do I do? What do you do? We have to be and make disciples. That's our role. And that starts at home. It starts in the family. So if you go way back to the beginning, Genesis chapter 18, God's talking about Abraham, and he had a meal with Abraham there. He had that God and Abraham table. They had a little barbecue. And then God says, why not show to Abraham what I'm about to do? Abram was his name at the time. I'm going to make a great nation of this guy. And he says, and all the nations are going to be blessed by him because I've chosen him. And get this, it says right there in chapter 18, I've chosen him that he will lead his children and their descendants to walk in the way of the Lord and to do what is right and just. Okay? And so ever since the beginning, missions begins in the home. It begins with you sit down at the table with God. And in the church, we have Jesus saying, I'm knocking at the door. I want to sit down at the table with you. And then it begins with the home. And he says, and as this is how, it says right there in that text, this is how I will bring to pass all that I have promised to Abraham. What's that mean? He was going to bring to pass the whole missionary vision of God throughout the Bible. And it came down to, will Abraham be faithful with his family? Will he raise those kids to love the Lord? And so as we overflow from the Jesus table to the family table, a God's family table gathering like this one right here, and the table itself is going to be, there's going to be tacos across the street here pretty soon, but the idea is that gathering in this level of circle, imagine if this was made up of several families that throughout the whole week, mom and dad have been coming to the table with the kids, hey, turn off the cell phones, put the cell phone over there, okay, what did you get from the, let me tell you, dad's going to tell you what I got from the word, mom's going to tell you what she got, what did you guys get? And that meal with good food, not warmed up, something that came from a frozen, no, good food. That's a good part of it, good food. And you sit down with the kids and you're like, hey, this is the family table. And then imagine you get together in God's family table and it's a bunch of families like that all throughout the week have been celebrating God at the table. And this whole gathering is going to be like, hey, I got to tell you what God did. I know the song's starting right now, but at the end, wait, don't leave. I got to tell you what God did in our family this week. That's the kind of encouraging for love and good works that Hebrews 10, 24, 25, 26 talks about. That when you gather, you don't reject the gatherings because that's where you're going to be encouraged. You're going to encourage one another for love and good works. And so that's where the God's family table comes to play. And then, of course, the community table, salt and light, where you go out there in the community as that kind of church with the backpacks and with different other strategies and say, hey, we're going to set the table for this community. They're going to come taste and see who Jesus is because that's the kind of church we are. But it all starts back there with time, individual time at the table with Jesus, and everything that we do, being passionate about being an ambassador that makes ambassadors. So we just wanted to share with you how that works down there and what we've been learning about that. Basically, as people are drawn, as God draws people in from the community, it's not, I used to think I had to draw them into the core. And so we're going to draw them into the core of our ministry, and then then we'll build them up to be, committed, the part of the congregation. And although that is a good way of organizing the actual structure of a church, the idea that I don't need to draw them into something I'm going to care for. I actually need to draw them to the table of Jesus where he's going to care for them. And they're at that table with Jesus, guess what? He's going to make them into overflowing disciples that overflow into their family. And as they send them out, that family is going to be sent to local churches like this one to make an impact for the glory of God. And that church will make an impact in the community and to the ends of the earth. So God's family is made up of families that are made up of disciples. So if you think about how do you plant churches in Brazil, how do you plant churches in America, how do you strengthen this church to live its mission? It comes down to beginning with you and I taking serious time to spend the time at the table with Jesus, having something to offer our families, something authentic. I remember years ago, family table was coming. It was in the morning, and it was back when Facebook had just come out, and I had my first tablet, and I was looking at the news. And there's a news article there. It's in the news, so it's got to be good, right? And there was an article there about bikinis, something or other, and I was like, well, it's in the news. And as I clicked on that article on that tablet, I was like, God, it's like, Shane, you don't need to be looking at that article. And so I turned it off, went to bed, and I didn't know, it was early years of Facebook, that got posted to my wall. So I spent the night up on the wall of Facebook, and next morning I wake up and there's like, Pastor, you were hacked. Somebody posted something about the Battle of the Bikinis on your wall. I was like, oh man, thank you for thinking I was hacked. But I just deleted the whole thing, and it's like, God, what am I going to do now? I inadvertently looked at a news article that I shouldn't have, posted it to my Facebook wall. Now I got to give devotion to the kids. What am I going to talk about? Well, authentic conversation around the table. So devotions that morning before church, before going off to school, was kids. The kids were probably 8 and 6. I need you guys to pray for Dad. There's a verse in the Bible that says if you do something in secret, it's going to be announced from the tops of the hill of the rooftops. Dad needs you to pray. So that was the whole conversation around the table. I'm saying that to use as an example. Whatever family table you do, if it's not authentic, your kids can they can see right through it. You might here in this setting be able to present a type of spirituality that the kids, they're not going to stand up and say, Mom and Dad aren't living that at home. They're not going to do that because they still need a bicycle and they still need other things. But they know. They absolutely know how authentic you are. And so that time around the table is a time of sometimes confession and a time of forgiveness. And so then when my son turned 12, he comes to me and hands me the phone and says, Dad, could you keep this for a while? I need help. But he knew that he could come because Dad's not perfect, and Dad is willing to be called to account by the family and is willing to walk in authenticity. So what I wanted to say is that you're not going to get to a God's family table or the church that produces passionate ambassadors of Christ if it's not made up of individual ambassadors that are authentic and passionate about Christ. Does that make sense? So let's just take a look at one of the texts that you could go to here. I'm going to look at Psalm 128. It's a good text about the family table. Remembering that each component here of the family table is in its own right someone, a man, a woman, a kid, who needs to be passionate about being an ambassador for Christ themselves. So blessed are all who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to him. So Dad, do you walk in obedience to Jesus? It's interesting that we understand that the Great Commission is about making disciples, and that's baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit, and teaching them. But a lot of times the Western church, I say the Western church, I'm talking about America's, South America, teaching is the answer there. So we get more and more teaching. But actually, if you go on in the verse, it says teaching them to obey. And I was talking to a mentor of ours who's in Indonesia, and they've got house churches. You can't have a church with a sign like this over there in Jakarta. And the last 22 years, they've been working just disciples who make disciples in their home. They're at 350,000 disciples in 22 years. I don't understand. First, I don't believe. That's my problem. Let me sit down and talk to them. So I got to sit down with them and talk to them about that. And he's like, Shane, what's your strategy? Disciples who obey. That's the only thing we do. So they don't have any other programs. All just disciples who obey. That's all we do. And parents then teach your kids to be disciples who obey. That family then will overflow the idea of disciples who obey. And it's a huge difference between disciples and between teaching and teaching disciples to obey is a different thing. That's why we have to find ways to implement more of an obedience strategy than a knowledge strategy. And that's why it takes about 2 hours of that house church service to go through people giving testimonies how they obeyed the last Bible study we had before we go into a new one. Imagine if it became normal to just get a Bible study on a Sunday forget about it during the week, come back and get another one. That would be a tragedy if that became normal. Okay, so when we're talking about a family that's going to change the world, blessed are all who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to him. So the man, he's talking to the man here because at the end it says, and yes, this will be the blessing for the man who fears the Lord. So starting out with the dad. Dad, do you walk in obedience to Jesus? You will eat the fruit. You eat the fruit of your labor. Blessings and prosperity will be yours. So it's talking about that God's idea of a family that represents his vision for what he wants in his people. It's a man who fears the Lord, is obedient to the Lord. He's a hard worker, and they're going to eat from his labor. And has your work ethic brought blessing and prosperity to your family? I'm not saying, wealth. It's not a health and wealth passage here. It's the guy's, he fears God and works hard. And he brings home food for the kids, and he brings home what's needed at the house. Then it goes on and says, your wife will be a fruitful vine. So this is, mom, do you give your family your best fruit of your labor? And there's women who do an amazing impact in the work world around us. They bring beauty and creativity and a kind of look at quality that a lot of times guys don't bring to whatever type of job description we're talking about. But the question here is, are you a fruitful vine in your home? Do you give that same kind of quality work to the home and to the family, to the kids, to the table? Do they get that too? And that same thing's true for the father. And we give a lot out there, so that, we make sure that thing for our job out there is well done, and it's not just thrown together. But then sometimes it's family day. What are we going to do? I don't know. What do you guys want to do? But I remember it took a lot of planning to get there, but it was years of planning. And we were at the Eiffel Tower on February 14th, Valentine's Day at midnight, looking off over Paris, and they got the kids close, and they were maybe 15 and 13. Like, kids, do you know why we're here? Yes. Why? Because God is good. Because Jesus is the most important thing in the world. That's why we're here. Now, it was a mission trip to India. Aaron and I could have gone alone, left the kids, but we saved up, we saved up when we finished paying it off a few years after that too. But we took the kids with us because we wanted them to meet Brother Andrew in Holland. If you've ever heard of a missionary hero, wanted them to be in Paris with us and then go to India for the mission trip. It's going to take hard work and creativity to plan out family times that the kids are going to be inspired to be ambassadors, to be and make ambassadors of Jesus. Your children will be like olive shoots around the table. Dad and mom, do you prioritize a family table? These aren't olive trees. The culture in the Middle East there, in Israel, is about a lot of olive industry, olive oil, olives themselves. So that olive tree means prosperity, and it also means, industry. The kids are not that yet. They're actually olive plants around the table. They need to be well cared for around the table. They need to be invested in around that family table. So is there such a thing as a family table where the kids can be olive plants around it? I remember when Aaron made the decision to put a little sticker off the side of our table, or the size of a cell phone, and you had to put your phone on top of that sticker to come to the table to eat, because it was a competition, and there wasn't even Instagram at that time. It was a competition of all the different things that can show up on your phone, and there was no conversations going back and forth. But then to see our kids get married and institute in their own life, not only family table, but also a day of rest, 1 in 7. And ours, they grew up with, one time it was Monday, another season it was Tuesday. For the last 10 years it was Thursdays. And so Gabe and Camila are both English teachers, and Gabe's is Thursday. He doesn't work on Thursday, he misses out on a lot of classes, but him and his wife have a day, 1 in 7, where they can just delight in the Lord, spend time around the table, and the kid is going to be born into that. So mom and dad, do you guys provide this family table where the kids can be these olive plants around it? Kids, yeah, there's some kids here. There's some youth here. Do you sit down around the family table with your phone off? I mean, do you respect that? Is it like pulling teeth for your mom and dad to set something up like that? Don't. Let them invest in your life. You're building something that's going to make a difference in your church, in the city, in America, and in the world. And that's what the text goes forward to say. Basically, as you look at the text, it's a very short psalm. It says, yes, this will be the blessing for a man who fears the Lord. May the Lord bless you from Zion. And now, today we don't go to Zion. It's over there in Israel. That's where the temple's on top of that little mount. But we go to where the people of God gather, which in our case is church. And so the church is going to be a blessing to this family. This family is going to be a blessing to church. May the Lord bless you from Zion. May you see the prosperity of Minneapolis all the days of your life. For them, it was Jerusalem, no. But as you take these little bags out and you seek to be a blessing to people around here, and as you invite people, your neighbors, to your table, you can be a blessing to this city. This church will be a blessing to the city. If it's made up of individual ambassadors of Christ who spend time with Jesus, who then overflow to their family, and then bring that to here, that'll make a difference out there. Prosperity of Jerusalem, all the days of your life. And it says, may you live to see your children's children. Peace be on Israel. And he's talking about generational transformation. You might have heard of generational wealth, where you make investments that take a long time to mature, but then your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids will have that investment if they don't squander it, right? So God thinks in terms of generations. He says in Genesis 18, I will make come to pass all that I promised Abraham as he invests in his children and his grandchildren and going on forward. So maybe you're saying, Shane, my kids are grown, they're out of the house. You can be a family table grandparent. You can do this right where you are right now, and maybe it's helping a younger couple out to help them walk through this. My mom passed away last year, and as we were going through her things, we found some family notes from family history that had been, one of my uncles had looked all this up, and I didn't know about some of these things, and so this is the history of where we came from. William Evans was in the Civil War. He survived. That's his discharge paper there. He came to Minnesota, and he was actually a pastor up in Big Lake, Minnesota. So we were just up there, with Joel and Lisa, and I think I passed Big Lake on the way up there. I wanted to go in and see if I could find, the Congregational Church in Big Lake. So I would have never imagined that there was a pastor in my mom's side of the family, because everybody else was totally godless, from that family. So what happened? You got that idea. The question comes, what happened? William Evans, God allows him to survive the Civil War. He comes back. He's a pastor in Minnesota, and then he has kids. And Eva, there is one of his kids, Eva, and she marries Herbert Stimson, and he's a successful mercantile owner. They move out to Seattle area, and he owns this, pharmacy, that one of those shops sells everything. Probably had, some soda in there, the soda fountain things. And so, successful businessman. And then he has Bill as one of his kids, my grandpa, Bill Stimson. I got to meet him a few times. I grew up in Brazil, so a few times I was in the U.S., got to spend time with Grandpa. I loved Grandpa Bill. And he got saved a couple of days before he passed away. Did not live a life as a Christian. Made it very hard for my mom when she got saved at 13. Both my grandpa and my grandma, it was very oppressive because of her making the decision for Christ. He was very successful, though. He was the architect for the Grand Ole Opry. So he was the architect of that building. Maybe the first song sung on the Grand Ole Opry stage was Jesus Loves Me, because I got to sing on that stage when they were still building it. Jesus Loves Me was out there. And so here we have now a transition from a pastor, and then his kids marrying business people, and then having kids that then are successful in business, but don't follow the Lord. And then mom had to get saved by somebody else. God had to bring somebody else into the family to save my mom and his dad as well. And my dad as well. And but I was raised in a Christian home then. So it's like I got a reboot there. There was a family table. I was taught Bible verses around that family table. We had game night and family time, and we made it exciting to be missionary kids. And then my kids were then raised around a family table with God at the center and with passion for being and making ambassadors of Christ, being the center of our and there was a lot of times that they got to hear mom and dad say, we're sorry because we messed up one way or another, and they learned to do that too. And so we were in Cambodia a couple years ago on a mission trip, just Aaron and I, and the kids were that age there. Camila was probably 18, Gabe's 16, and they are there's another missionary just looking out for them while we're gone, and we're over there, we're thinking, how are the kids? How are the kids doing? And so we're praying and we're curious, hey, how are the kids there? We send him a text, and he sends us this picture here. So with downtown Porto Alegre, city like about the size of Minneapolis, Camila's playing there. This was that song, The Lord's Prayer. This guy falls down there, Gabe on his knees, Gabe's praying for him. He just sent us this picture. I was like, I think the kids are all right. And I've had so many conversations with parents in Brazil mostly, and like, how are the kids doing? Well, one's getting really good grades, and the other guy's got a good job. One's going to be a doctor. There's nothing wrong with any of that. God's going to use doctors and lawyers and businessmen. He's going to use all that. But the thing is, when you ask mom and dad, are the kids doing all right? The answers a lot of times are educational and financial. And the only true way to know if your kids are all right is, are they falling before the Lord and being ambassadors that'll make ambassadors of Christ? Because imagine if it was bicycles. We were sent in the Great Commission. He says, go into all the world and make disciples. Sometimes we get confused about that. But if it was bicycles, it might have been easier to understand. Go into all the world and make bicycles. So imagine someday you have to stand before the Lord with the life, the one and only life you lived. And you get to stand before the Lord, and he says, okay, did you make any bicycles? So you lift up the garage and say, well, here, look, all the tools for bicycle making are right here, spray painted, and I know where to hang them. I got all these manuals for bicycle making here. I've got these certifications. I can work on any bicycle out there. I'm good to go. And then he makes that fateful question. Good. Did you actually ever make any bicycles? And what if you come before the Lord someday and he only asks us to do one thing? We do so many things. But he says, go into all the world and make disciples. And what if you come before him someday and, hey, I got a lot of training, I got a lot of certifications, I passed a lot of courses. Did you ever make one disciple? So I'd like to invite you to think about that. And as we close up, I'm just going to throw, these are notes from the survival hospital, let's say. So I'm going to just talk about what it looks like to have a father's house that has a family table. And then you can just, maybe there'll be some ideas that you can add to this. Maybe it'll be something that'll be inspiring to you. But as we went back and looked at how we sometimes it felt like we're going to barely make it through with the kids. But there was so much prayer and crying out to God. And one of the first things you need to know is the father's house cannot be the same as the distant land. So as parents, have courage. You don't bring the distant land into the father's house afraid that the kids are going to not like you. There had to be a difference between where the prodigal son went to end up with the pigs. than the Father's house, because then the Father's house had a place to rescue that kid back to. So don't be intimidated by kids and make the distant land into the Father's house. The foundation of this house is Jesus. Jesus has to be the foundation. Everything we do is to bring glory to him. The love is on top of that foundation. Mom and dad's unconditional love for each other has to be something that the kids can count on. And recently on Camila's wedding, they did a foot washing at the wedding. But they washed the parents' feet. I was surprised. They brought me and Aaron and then the other parents out there, and the bride and the groom washed our feet. And as she was washing our feet, and I'm sobbing, of course, 200 guests there, and they're like, Mom and Dad, thank you for staying together. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for bringing us around the day. All the things that she was saying there, and as dressed in white, and was like, God, thank you. But there has to be unconditional love that the kids can recognize and see. And then the covering of this house is prayer. They need to see Mom and Dad praying. One of the columns, fearless truth and love. You got to tell the truth to your kids, no matter what it costs. But you have to do it in love. I remember Gabe, I put this picture here because Gabe's there with Nachi. We love Nachi. She's an amazing woman of God. A couple years before that picture was taken, Gabe was on his phone during the pandemic with this girl. She was a model. He's like, Dad, look at this girl. She goes to church. She's a model. We knew her family. We had been on vacation with them. It's like, Gabe, Mom and I prayed about it. We don't think that's the one. Dad, she's a model. I was like, Gabe, we've been praying about it. We don't think she's the one, seriously. Half an hour later, I passed by his room, and I hear him on the phone, and he's like saying, well, listen, it's not going to work out. And I can just imagine him saying, well, what happened? He says, well, I've been praying, and it's not what God wants. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. I mean, kids don't have that kind of respect with their parents usually, right? And it was a lot of prayer and a lot of humiliation sometimes, as you have to be authentic with your kids so that they trust you enough to come up with something like that. So fearless truth and love, good example of the parents. So here Aaron is with Vacation Bible School, serving with Camila. There's Aaron this morning. If you went into Joel and Lisa's kitchen there, you would have seen her copying the Bible. She just finished her first copy of the handwritten of the Bible like 2 weeks ago. And so it took her about 8 years. But the kids grew up seeing Mom every morning copying the Bible. Why? Because God told her to do it. And in a devotional moment, God, I haven't done it. I don't think it's not for me. I'm going to study the Bible. But she's doing her second copy, one for each kid. But you cannot try to snow your kids with religion. They're going to see right through it. But you can be an authentic, vulnerable example around the table. And friends and ambiance is so important. Friends and hangouts. To know where your kids are, to know who they're hanging out with, to make your house that place that's willing to hang out. You might have to break some dishes. You might have to spend a lot on groceries, but make your house that place where the kids want to go, right? You got Gabe, Nachi, and Thiago. Camila had already done this internship the year before. She was in Australia going to Bible college at this time. But as a missions pastor at the time, I was like, I'm going to come up with a ministry where my kids can be close to, they can be with other good kids for the year after high school. So we came up with this ministry. It only lasted 2 years, but I got all my kids through there, right? I got my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law, my 2 kids. And I don't know, I think they should have kept it up. But my mission was, I need to get my kids through. They need to be well taken care of in this transitional time when anything can happen. They got out of high school, they're not sure where they're going to go. Whatever you do, have intention and do whatever it takes, before the Lord to make sure that the kids know that you care who they're hanging out with and who their friends are. And then the fourth column that we put here is total engagement. At one point, I got called into the pastor's study where I was the missions pastor. It took us about 10 years in this ministry, and the church grew, and it grew a lot, during those 10 years. And so more and more, we lived about 45 minutes from the church, And more, the pastors are like, Shane, you're spending longer and longer hours away from your family. So he calls me into the office and says, Shane, I want to tell you something, and I want you just to listen. Okay. I said, Shane, I want to tell you something. I want you just to listen. Okay. He said it the third time. It's like, whoa. Shane, I really think you need to sell your house, move into the city. My house is already paid off. I'm not going to be able to afford anything in the city because I think you need to be closer to your kids. There's too much distance. And your daughter, I've heard some things. I could have said, how did you hear things about my daughter that I don't know? Well, she had begun cutting. She had begun going through different things I didn't know about because I was so involved in the ministry. And said, Shane, you need to take a look at your family, get everybody together, because things are going on in your home you don't know. Well, instead of getting offended that somebody went to the pastor and told about my daughter, which I could have, I was like, I knew I needed help. So I just went that route. So we started praying. We put the kids in a school, took them out of the school that had a very dangerous environment, put them in a different school. We couldn't afford it, but God gave the English classes to Aaron to pay for it. Sold our car. We had a nice car, went with like a junker car for a while to be able to pay for that school. We sold our house and moved into the city so it could be just a few minutes. And we had to go, I want to live 100 meters from where the kids go to school. And I became a chaplain in that school. So I was seeing them at recreation time. I was playing soccer with them. You might not be able to do all that. But do you come before the Lord and say, God, I'm totally engaged. I will do what it takes because we have this mission. God will come to pass all that he has for the Latham family as I invest in those kids and in their kids. And so we have this group, family WhatsApp group where we send pictures and notes back and forth. It's called G10. G10 stands for 10 generations. And so what we've told the kids is for the next 10 generations, no one's going to get away from the Lord. Do you guys understand that? Yeah, we do. You guys believe it? We believe it. We believe too. Okay. Is that going to happen? Of course it's going to happen. I'm not going to ever say anything different than that. I'm going to pray till the day I die that the next 10 generations, no one's going to get away from the Lord. But let me give you some hope. If you were to talk to my parents when I was 18, you would have no hope. You're like, but they were praying. Mom showed up at my ordination, when I was 25, and she had a little paper that out of my cover of my Bible back when I was 11. I said, I'm going to be a missionary. And she saved that piece of paper. And I went through drugs. I went through the teenage years of getting involved with even breaking into homes. I was a mess as a missionary kid. And my parents never gave up praying for me. So grandpa, grandma, mom and dad, don't give up. Pray for those kids. And realize that the way that God is going to bless the world is that you will sit down at the table with Jesus and be an authentic disciple. And you're going to overflow that to your kids and to your wife around the table. Maybe it's grandkids by now. And then you're going to come to a church and you're like, hey, this is what God's doing in our family. Let me encourage you. And that kind of church will make a difference in the city and to the ends of the earth. Let me just encourage you to have an I will statement maybe for what we're talking about here. A couple more things that I was going to say. This kind of family has, the windows in this house, the vision, prophetic vision of the future. So that, hey, I remember my parents saying, Shane, when you turn 18, you can do whatever you want. But until then, you're going to go to church. Well, I turned 18, what do you think I did? Whatever I wanted. They told me that my whole life. They didn't mean to say that, but that was the thing. You turn 18, you can do what you want. It's like, hey, kids, you're going to follow God every day of your life for the rest of your life. They're only going to hear that from me. They're not going to hear the negative reinforcement. And I remember when I said to Camila, when she was there, she's 13, and we're giving her that promise ring, say, hey, I'm going to help you pick the guy someday. And then 2 months ago, we're taking the picture there of her in a wedding dress. She got engaged to another guy, and it was 2 months out from the wedding that she met in Australia. And at first, he kind of fooled our family and stuff. But we're like, this isn't the guy. We know this isn't the guy. So now what do? We've already paid for the venue. I've given him permission. What do? Pray. We prayed like crazy. And I prayed specifically, God, open the guy's mouth so he can show Camila what he's like. And so about 2 months before the wedding, he said, well, you know, we're never going to live close to your parents because your dad is toxic. And I've always wanted a toxic church since then, you know, like, toxic. She goes, my dad's toxic? Why? Because he's always talking about God, oversaved. You know, he's always talking about God. And imagine what he's going to pressure our kids to be missionaries. You know, we don't want that kind of thing. It's like, she said, my dad has never pressured us to be missionaries. He's always said, you can do whatever you want in life. You're going to be a missionary no matter what. You're just going to be a missionary, you know, bricklayer, or a missionary teacher, or a missionary, because we are people that live on mission. That's what being a missionary means. He said, by the way, I think that we're done. If you think my dad's toxic, I think we're, yes. Vision of the future. And in the middle of that house, there's this family table. That's what I wanted to focus on. You can go home today for lunch or go to a restaurant. You can say, guys, all those crazy things that were said at church, your phone will be blowing up, you know. What can we apply? What can we put in practice? I will establish my table with Jesus. It all starts there. I will establish, global mission starts right there. I will establish my table with Jesus. I will overflow Jesus to my family. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity. I pray that you will make the mission of this church truly come to pass, that it will be a place where you are glorified by individuals and by families who develop passionate ambassadors of Jesus. And it needs to start in me. It needs to start in my home. In Jesus' name, amen.